Went to the grocery store yesterday, and as I was walking down one of the aisles, there was a woman that passed by me, and she was on her cell phone talking pretty loudly so I could hear everything she was saying. And as she passed by, I heard her say, "I have done so much for her, I can't understand how she could possibly be doing this to me. What is she thinking? Nothing she's saying makes any sense." And then she walked off down the aisle. And I thought to myself, that's the exact kind of reasoning I hear all the time as an attorney in the family law setting, is people will come to me and say, "I don't understand how the other side could possibly think XYZ or ABC. Let me explain my reasoning about what's going on and why what they're saying doesn't make any sense." My name is David Enevoltson, and I am the creator of Emotional Embuffination. In this video, I want to talk to you a little bit about how we can break down what the other side is saying, how emotions work, and how we can understand them. A couple of caveats before we jump into this. One is, this is a model of my own creation. And because of that, some of you may find some disagreement with it. The principles are not just pulled out of the air. I've extrapolated these specifically from other sources, so it's not like I just completely manufactured everything. But the specific model is mine. Now, if you are going through this model and you say this doesn't make sense for whatever reason, or you don't like it, that's fine. You can either tweak this model or embrace a completely different model. The key thing in my mind is to ensure that you're analyzing. So when you're in a particular situation, you don't just look at somebody else's behavior and say, "That doesn't make any sense, they're crazy." Because, number one, it's going to de-escalate your emotional state to ensure that you're analyzing things. Because if you start to engage that rational part of your brain and you start actively reasoning out what's going on, it's going to make a big difference in how you are emotionally reacting. Another thing is it just helps you to understand what's going on from somebody else's perspective, which will facilitate agreements or getting along or solving the problem that's in front of you if you can understand what's motivating this other person. So don't just say, "I don't know what's going on, they're crazy." Break it down and figure it out. And whether you use this model that I'm offering you or you use some modified version of that or something entirely different, analyze it. Just figure out what's going on. Now, with that said, let's jump into it. This is all about the emotional reactions and how people behave. Now, the first piece of this whole thing is going to start with an event. There's some external thing that happens, something that happens outside of us, and it has to then move from the event into one of the emotional gateways that we have. Now, there's two major emotional gateways we have. One is a biological state, and the other one is rules or expectations. Now, rules or expectations are when we expect something to be a certain way, or when we've generated a rule about how something is going to be, it can be emotionally significant to us. If I, for example, feel really strongly about the environment, and I think that everyone should use bags that they bring from home when they go to the grocery store, and they should not use plastic or paper bags. If then someone comes to me and says, "Oh my gosh, people that care about the environment are all idiots and you should just use the plastic bags," I might have an emotional reaction to that, because that's touching on one of the internalized rules or expectations that I have. The other major emotional gateway is a biological state. Now, a biological state is essentially anything that's hardwired into us. So, for example, if I'm walking down the street and I'm a heterosexual male and I see this pretty girl walk by me, I might go, "Ooh, look at that." And I might have some emotional reaction to that because I'm hardwired to feel something in that circumstance. Lots of different things you can have, fight or flight type responses. If we feel scared or threatened by someone, we might have one of those reactions. Somebody comes in and starts screaming at us and we think they're going to hurt us. I might want to fight them, or I might want to run away. Those are, again, biological state reactions. If we don't have one of these two things, or some combination of these two things, we're not going to feel anything. Example, if I'm walking down the street and I see somebody laying concrete over in the corner, I may not care. That might not have anything to do with my world, and it therefore is not going to create an emotional reaction for me because it's just some dude over there doing something. So we have to have a gateway to experiencing emotions at all. Once we have something, once there's an emotional gateway there, we're going to proceed on to these three different tiers here. Now, the first one is the primary emotional reaction. Primary emotional reaction is about what happens in the moment that you're experiencing the external event. So if somebody jumps out of the bushes and starts screaming at you, you're probably going to feel either like you want to fight them or you want to run away. You're going to have that fight or flight response. That jumps through the biological state, which makes you have a reaction. And that fight or flight response is the primary emotional reaction. It's the thing you're feeling in the moment that the event is happening. The idea with the primary emotional reaction is we want to ensure that we're not sitting around debating what's going on. We just have an emotional response that's going to keep us alive or keep us safe in the moment something's happening. Now, if you're looking at our ancestors and a saber-toothed tiger jumps out from behind the bushes and is about to eat you, you need to do something. You can't stop and go, that's interesting. There's a big tiger there, and I would bet he could eat me, and he could do great harm to me. I wonder what my best chances of doing something are. I could go up that tree, or I could run over here. Maybe I could get that stone, and I could hit him over the head. Now, there's a lot of different options here, and I wonder what my best one is. If you're going through an analysis like that in the moment where the saber-toothed tiger is there, you're going to be dead. You got to move fast and act and react and do something immediately. That is the point of the primary emotional reaction, is it's keeping you safe in the moment that something is happening. But once that primary emotional reaction has ended and the event has passed, time goes on, we then will shift into the secondary emotional reaction. Now, the secondary emotional reaction is all about ensuring that whether the thing was positive that happened and the feelings that we were having out of the event were positive, we optimize those, make them happen again, or if they were negative, we try to make sure that they never happen again. For example, if I touch a hot stove, my hand starts burning, I'm going to have the primary emotional reaction of experiencing pain and get upset, and I might freak out and run backwards. That's the primary emotional reaction. After the event, when I'm sitting there thinking about my hand, I might say, oh my God, I was so stupid. I can't believe I did that. It was really dumb. I'm never going to do that again. And when you're sitting there dwelling on the thing that happened in the past, you start to create associations that are going to, it helps you to break down so that you can develop associations and rules that are going to help you make sure that that never happens again. The flip side of that is you can have the exact same behavior pattern when something positive is happening. Let's say you go on a date and you just had an amazing time and you got this significant other that is like a great prospect, and you're floating and you're dancing around and you feel really happy and you just keep thinking over and over and over again about what happened on the date last night. That's the same basic behavior pattern. I'm dwelling on what happened, this time in a positive sense, because I want to make sure that that thing that was making me feel good in the moment is going to happen again. And so by going over and over and over in your mind what happened, you help to maximize pleasure and minimize pain. That's kind of the end goal. And that leads us into the third phase here, which is the rule generation. And the rule generation is taking that lesson that we learned in the secondary emotional reaction and turning it into a rule. And with that rule, we can then alter the way that we live our lives. Now, a very important point about this rule generation is that the rule generation doesn't have to make objective sense to everyone around you. It just has to make sense to the person that has generated the rule. An example of that is, let's say that somebody was really badly hurt in a relationship because somebody was like cheating or doing something crazy, and they walk out starting to think, okay, well, every time this has happened to me, it's been with this guy, so all guys are liars. Now, objectively, we know that that isn't true. Not every guy out there is a liar. Not every guy out there is some cheating monster. But you might have that rule. And now if you start walking around guiding your life by that, people on the outside might say, what the heck, that's stupid. Why do you think that? I don't understand how you could even come around with that perspective. But this person is now operating with this rule that makes sense to them. And notice that that goes back to one of our emotional gateways, is once you've developed these rules, then that can be something that brings you back into an emotional reaction. So let's say you've developed that rule about all guys are liars, and then somebody comes up to you and says, most guys are not liars. You might have an emotional reaction to that and say, no, that's stupid. All guys are liars. And if I try to say otherwise, you're going to flip out. That's one of those emotional gateways. Now, out of any of these phases, from the primary emotional reaction, the secondary emotional reaction, the rule generation, you are going to experience some sort of behavior. In the moment, you react in some way. From the secondary emotional reaction, if you're just like moping or like dancing, whatever that is, there's a behavior that comes out of that. Rule generation, we start to act out of the rules that we're creating. So whatever phase you're looking at here, there's going to be some sort of a behavior. Let's look at an example so we can illustrate all this so you can kind of get a sense of how this works. Let's have an event. Let's say that John is in this relationship with Sarah. They're just getting along great. Everything's going wonderful. They talk to each other about being exclusive. And then one day, John comes home and he finds Sarah and another guy. They're both in his bed and they're both in the act of intercourse. And John sees all this. John loses it. So because this goes into, and this is an important note, is again, you can have both the biological state and a rule or expectation, but just pick one. In this particular instance, I'm looking at the rule or expectation. There was the idea there that it expressed to each other that they were exclusive, therefore they shouldn't be seeing anyone else. Now, when John sees that, his immediate reaction is going to be anger. He's going to say, what the heck? You know, there's also going to be a sort of biological reaction in terms of jealousy, but we'll just focus on the rule part of this. So he's going to experience that anger. That's the primary emotional reaction. He flips out, and then a behavior comes out of that. John freaks out. He attacks the guy that's in the bed, and he starts screaming at him. So that's the behavior that's coming out of it. That's your primary emotional reaction phase. Next, the event passes. So time goes on. He goes home, and he just starts moping. He's experiencing things based on what he's thinking about happened in that event. So he's replaying the event in his mind. He keeps seeing this guy in the bed with Sarah, and he's just, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. He starts feeling anger. He starts feeling hurt. He's feeling ashamed and disgust and all these different negative emotions. And the behavior that's coming out of that is he's hiding at home. He's not talking to anybody, and he's just moping. That's the secondary emotional reaction phase. And again, this is trying to generate rules that are going to teach you to prevent something terrible like this from happening again. Finally, we're going to lead into the rule generation. So one possible rule, one association that John could create here is to say, oh, well, every woman is going to cheat on you. This happened to me before, so I might as well just do whatever I want to because it doesn't matter. You know, women are just all liars and cheats. And then he goes out and gets a new girlfriend. And then he has a behavior based on that new rule. He says, well, I can do whatever the heck I want to, so I'm just going to go out and cheat. Who cares? And then he starts cheating on this new girlfriend. Let's go to a second example. Now, in this one, take kind of a more positive scenario. Let's say that John finally has a child, and the child's name is Elias. And every Sunday, John and Elias go out to breakfast, and they have this like routine that they go through. And every time they go, Elias is super excited about it. The event that's happening is Elias goes and has breakfast with John. Now we're looking at this from the perspective of Elias. Now he feels happy about this. There's a biological state there in terms of needing to be accepted by family members, by other people, and we're tapping into that here. So Elias feels super happy. That's his primary emotional reaction when they go out to breakfast. It's a great thing. And then you can tell that because the behavior that's coming out of this is Elias starts talking really fast. He's smiling, he's like happy, and it's just really obvious that he's exhibiting happy behaviors. Later on, he goes home and he talks to Linda, his mom, and he's thinking about the breakfast, and he's feeling all this happiness and pride, and it's this wonderful breakfast that they went out to. And Linda can see it because Elias is bouncing around and talking all happy. So here again, there's a behavioral product from the secondary emotional state, which Elias is going over and over and over again, talking to his mom, Linda, about. So that's a secondary emotional reaction where he's playing these things over in his mind. Now let's imagine that when they go out to breakfast, generally speaking, they always get bacon. And bacon is this, to them, this amazing thing, and they think it's wonderful, and it's just, you're un-American if you don't eat bacon, and it's ridiculous to think anything to the contrary. And let's also say that Linda doesn't actually like bacon. And so later on, Elias has now created this rule that bacon is good, and if you don't like bacon, you're not an American. That's the rule that's created. Now, if anybody conflicts with that rule, now we're going back to one of our emotional gateways, and Elias is going to have a negative reaction. So let's say that Linda starts talking to him about how she doesn't like bacon. Elias is going to flip out and go, "What? That's crazy! I can't believe," and he's going to have this emotional reaction to the statement. So here's a scenario where we've developed the same basic sequence of things, but in a positive way. This is how the model works. Again, if you don't like this particular model, break it down in a different way. If you have questions about what's going on here, please put some comments down underneath the feed here. If you have not already done so, please check out the resources I have on www.embuffination.com. And also please subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is Emotional Embuffination, and make sure you get the notifications.